Bitcoin seems to be resilient right now. Even though we are pushing up as of this morning, doesn't mean that we still can not expect to get a pullback in the coming future. What's up, guys? My name is Edward Ornelas. In today's video, we're still going to talking about Bitcoin. Today, we did end up getting a push towards the upside, about a 2% give or take. But in my personal opinion, I am expecting a pullback regardless. And I'll talk about it right here, right now. All right, guys, so for those of you that are joining me, my name is Edward Ornelas. I do technical analysis on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. So if you do like this kind of content, be sure to like the video, subscribe, and let's get right into it, okay? So going back to Bitcoin, right now Bitcoin is experiencing a nice little push towards the upside. In fact, it does appear like it is flagging on the 4-hourly, right? If we draw our little trend line here, trend line tool really quickly, let's pull it back again right here, trend line. If we go down here, you can see that we're clearly drawing a flagging wedge. And typically, historically speaking, any single time something consolidates like a triangle, that usually refers to a bullish continuation towards the upside, meaning that things could possibly end up going upwards, all right? And while I do believe that eventually we could get a break towards the upside, I still am under the impression that in the coming, either this week or next week, we still will end up getting a push towards the downside. And let me explain why, right? I explained this in yesterday's video, but simply put, we still have a large gap in the market, all right? So if you pull up the Bitcoin futures chart, you can see that if we go into the 4-hourly, let's erase all these really quickly, you can see that we still have a pretty massive gap, all right? We have about a 7% gap from Friday up until Monday. And again, historically speaking, in the past, we've always have came back down to close those gaps. So I'm under the impression that eventually either this week or next week, maybe we could end up performing what's known as a fake out, right? Where we end up pushing upwards. And then eventually after some rejection, we could end up eventually coming back down to close that gap before consolidating some more and then continuing to push upwards, all right? Again, that is one possibility. All right, so let's go back to Bitcoin chart really quickly. Another possibility is also as well that we could very well just get a tap towards the downside, close the gap once again, and then consolidate without having to push upwards. That's also a strong probability. But again, guys, this doesn't mean that I'm necessarily bearish, all right? Something I've always talked about in the past is that any single time Bitcoin is consolidating above this red line, as you guys can see right here, this 200 exponential moving average towards the downside, this little red line down here, that usually signifies that we are still in a bullish uptrend, especially if we are above on the 4-hourly, right? On the 4-hour structure. Historically speaking, that means we are still uptrending. Again, if we go back to the daily and we go all the way back, right? So let's draw a little cross tool here. But if we go all the way back throughout the entire bull run from this year alone, any single time we've always respected that red line, that 200 exponential moving average, we've always managed to keep going upwards, right? Regardless of all the pullbacks. And even way back when, right? If you go all the way back to even 2019, right? Let's remove this really quickly. You can see throughout 2019, any single time we respected that red line, you can see we always made continuous higher highs there. And as right now, we have yet to break it. All right, we're still continuing to push upwards. And that is why I'm under the impression that even if we do come back down to close that gap, that we're not necessarily bearish. We're just probably going to end up consolidating at these highs, right? And then eventually end up pushing towards the upside. And what's that going to do for alts, right? I know a lot of people are very bullish on altcoins, including myself. I know one of my favorite altcoins is, of course, something like the Algorand. This morning, Algorand did push up over 10% on its Bitcoin chart and over 12% on its USD chart. I'm under the impression that most likely if we do end up getting a pullback on Bitcoin, that we will still continue to maybe possibly get another pullback, maybe some consolidation in between before pushing some higher highs, right? Same with something like Ethereum. I'm very bullish on Ethereum long term, and I do believe that eventually we will probably end up coming back down, maybe getting some more consolidation before we end up slowing down and again, continue to push upwards. So again, guys, for me, long term, I am still holding my Bitcoin. There's no reason for me to change that. I do believe that as long as we do respect those EMAs, guys. And for those of you that don't know what an EMA is, let me just toggle this on and off. I am so sorry, I just erased it. Let me just refresh this page really quickly. But essentially what an EMA is this, simply this yellow blue line. You guys can see that I'm toggling on and off. If I go back to Bitcoin, right, let's do that right now on the daily, you see that when I toggle the EMAs on and off, right, it's simply those support structures that allow us to see anywhere where Bitcoin could end up resting, right, where if it comes down to it, that could be a barrier or an entry for you to buy Bitcoin or for us to continue to move upwards. You can see throughout the entire time that we respected these EMAs, we were always above them and we were always continuing to uptrend. Even back here when we had those major corrections earlier in March and around June, July, August, you can see that we were still above that, again, 200 exponential moving average, right? So again, another reason why I'm not necessarily bearish, at least on a long-term scale. I do believe that we could still continue to uptrend, but we will eventually pull back temporarily to close that gap, okay? So that's pretty much all I have to say about Bitcoin. Nothing really changed from yesterday's video, just because, again, we are still in that, you know, more or less trajectory to possibly eventually close that gap. Doesn't mean that, again, we can't necessarily push upwards first, right? Like I said before earlier, is that we could very well push upwards before pulling back down to get a fake out and then close the gap and then consolidate to push upwards again. So that's also no strong probability, right? It doesn't mean that we won't necessarily go up first before we come back down. So don't be under the impression that we wouldn't. Hell, even Bitcoin could very well break above this 20,000 price range, right? We could very well get above that, maybe make some higher highs before coming back down, right? And then continue to consolidate and then continue to go up from there. So really a lot at stake. Nonetheless though, for me, this is the way I see it, right? If you are in Bitcoin, there's really no reason to worry just yet, just because we are still uptrending regardless. For me, like I said earlier, I am still going to be holding my Bitcoin. And even if Bitcoin does end up breaking below this support structure from right here, more or less of like around $16,000, I will still continue to hold. Bitcoin could very well come back down towards $14,000, right? It could very well come back way back down here, and I would still be holding on to Bitcoin because, again, we will still be respecting that 200 exponential moving average from here, and we would most likely end up continuing to hold it, consolidate around this vicinity, and then we would continue to push upwards, right? So long term, still very bullish nonetheless. All right, so very quickly, again, I want to cover maybe some altcoins. I know I did briefly cover a little bit into some Ethereum. So yeah, similar to what I talked about, I do believe that some altcoins will probably most likely end up coming back down and consolidating for an extended period of time before they end up pushing upwards. But again, long term with Ethereum, guys, I'm extremely bullish on this coin. I do believe that eventually it will end up retesting its all-time highs, right? Just because this is one of the founder, and if not the biggest altcoin next to Bitcoin, right? It is the biggest cryptocurrency next to Bitcoin. And I do believe that eventually it will have to come back up to its 2017, 2018 highs and could possibly even surpass that. But it would not surprise me if we do end up seeing that climb in the near future. All right, something also, another one's been doing quite tremendous is, of course, the Litecoin, right? I do believe something similar with Litecoin long term. If we pull up the daily structure, I do think that eventually, once this does end up getting some consolidation here and we continue to range, that we will most likely end up eventually breaking this major resistance structure before, and then consolidating above this area and then continue to push upwards. So basically, guys, to put it short, regardless of what altcoin you invest into, right now I'm extremely bullish all around. I do think that even if you're not in Bitcoin and you are holding altcoins, I wouldn't be scared, because long term, eventually they will come back down to for us to retest and for them to make higher highs, and they will end up surpassing Bitcoin's price action. All right, guys, so don't be scared if you are in altcoins and you're holding and you bought in a little too early, because eventually they will end up outperforming and end up doing extremely well. Right, you just have to be a little bit patient, and especially in the bull run, guys, everything pumps, everything goes, so don't be surprised. Okay, so if you guys have any other questions or you guys want me to cover any other altcoin in the market, feel free to let me know in the comments section down below, guys, and I will be sure to check it out in the next video. And I will most likely end up switching things around. So for that being said, guys, if you guys do enjoy this content, again, feel free to like the video, subscribe, and as always, I will see you on the next one.